Hi kids, I'm Adam Shanks. I'm with Purdue Extension here in Clinton County, and today we're going to talk about small unmanned aerial vehicle systems, or more commonly known as drones. I'm a certified drone pilot through the Federal Aviation Administration, and what that means is I had to pass a 60-question exam about different aeronautical questions, so different airspaces and about weather and all kinds of things, just so we can safely operate these drones in our airspace. Now this is what we call a quadcopter. So this has four. Quad means four. Copter, propellers, so it's got four propellers, so it's a quadcopter. This is called a Phantom 4. And so what this guy does is when we go up in the air, it's got this camera right here. And this camera is very similar to the one your mom and dad have on their cell phone. It takes pictures in high definition that are basically what you see with your naked eye. So the spectrum of red, green, and blue. Now, it also has a camera on the back here that picks up colors that are not visible to the naked eye. So we start to get off of the normal spectrum. This one starts to pick up other colors that are not normally seen. So I can actually take a flight and get several pictures of crops and see what their health is and if they are growing well, and help farmers make decisions if they're going to need to help work with their crops and make some changes. So, being that I had to pass a 60-question exam, there's lots of different regulations that go with this. And the main one is that you cannot fly a UAV or drone over 400 feet in the air. That's as high as we can legally fly. Now, that can change if you have to fly over an object. You can legally fly 400 feet over an object. So if we were going to look at a wind turbine or a power pole, something that's pretty high, we can actually fly 400 feet above that, unless we get into some airspace that's restricted by airports. But we can talk about that at another time. So 400 feet is as high as we can fly. 100 miles an hour is as fast as you can fly a drone. Can you believe that? 100 miles an hour or 80 knots is the legal limit as fast as you can fly a drone. Now, if we're going to look at our UAV, this one has the camera. It has these little windows here on the sides and on the, looks like here on the front. These guys are actually what we call obstacle avoidance. So as you're flying your drone and you come up to close to a building or something like that, it'll start to beep at you and actually stop before it gets a chance to collide with that. So very smart machine, and it tells you when you fly how high off the ground you are through these sensors on the bottom. It tells you how far away from you where you're holding your controller is, and it can also calculate then, based on how far away from you it is, how much battery it needs to get back home. So if the battery starts to get low, it'll start to beep at you, and if it gets low enough to a critical level, it'll actually come back to the place where it took off from. So pretty smart machine. I'll take this out. This is a lithium battery. This is what powers it, and I can get 15-20 minutes of flight time out of one of these, and it takes about an hour to charge. So we need to have several of these ready if we're going to go do a day of flying and looking at different things from the air. So those are the basics of a drone, 400 feet maximum, and what we can do with it. So what we're going to do is go out to the fairgrounds, and we're going to demonstrate how we do a flight, and you'll see what the camera sees as we go from there. Okay, so here we go. We've got the app open on our device that's connected to our remote control for the drone. We're connected to the drone, and we are receiving that our overall status is good, everything is up to date, and we're going to be waiting for satellites to be linked. We're going to triangulate here with up at the top. You notice we're at 8 satellites triangulated. We're ready to take off. We were flying actually in the airspace of the Frankfurt airport, so it asked me to confirm that I take responsibility to watch out for that aircraft. So I did, and we took off. Now we're climbing. If you look in the bottom, We are climbing up at a height, we're up to 110 feet, and we are moving away from the controller. So we are actually, if you watch that number, the distance away from the controller, 220, we'll keep moving. And if up in the top we see the GPS, we're actually looking at, we are triangulating off of 14 to 15 different satellites to get our location. We've got a strong signal. And then the next one is our signal with our remote control. And you can see we've got lots of bars there. We move on over in the green number there. We are at a 93. There we switch to a 92%. That's our battery life on the battery on board the drone. And if you see the timer there and the green slide, that actually is how much time we have left to fly on that battery. And it moves down, it counts down the more we fly. And over to the left of that, if we move down that slide line, you see it starts to turn yellow. That is adjusting how much time or how much battery is left to return home. So when the battery gets low enough, that tells us how much battery we need left to return back to the point of launch. And once it gets into the red, that is a critical battery level, and we need to land it immediately. But once it gets to home, and the cool part about that is that fluctuates or changes based on how much time it takes to get back home. So how the farther away we are, the more time it needs, so that will change. So you can see as we come back around the fairgrounds here, we're still flying at about 110 feet. We've got about 83, 84% battery left. Down in the bottom right, you can see the white pattern. That is where we actually flew. And now we are going to go ahead. We flew around the fairgrounds, and we're going to come down and land right here. We've got some breezy conditions today, so I'm going to move over out away from the buildings and land this drone. Hi kids, today we learned about SUAVs, or Small Unmanned Aerial Vehicles, also commonly known as drones. A couple of points that we talked about. Do you remember how high we can legally fly a small UAV or drone? How many feet off the ground can we fly? The answer is 400 feet. 400 feet off the ground is how high we can legally fly. Do you remember how fast we can legally fly a small UAV or drone? How fast we can fly? The answer is 100 miles an hour, or 87 knots. We can legally fly a drone 100 miles per hour. Do you remember my drone, what kind it is? What kind of drone mine is? Do you remember? It was a quadcopter, which means 4 propellers. So mine was a quadcopter, 4 propellers. I hope you enjoyed learning about UAVs today, and I look forward to working with you in the future.